This is A Silent War Within, the podcast dedicated to confronting the unseen mental health battles carried by our first responder and healthcare heroes. This show is about real stories, real struggles, and real ways to survive the storm and come out stronger on the other side. For too long, stigma has kept you silent, but this is your space to bravely break that silence, share vital insights, and build a community where your well-being truly comes first, because your service deserves unwavering support.
All right, well, welcome to A Silent War Within. We are excited to be here today, and it is so amazing that we have had such great support for the show. It is also amazing, the guest that we have today, Sophie Fuller, right?
Yeah, hey guys.
Paramedic Sophie from TikTok, Facebook. She's got a very large following. We are grateful to have her here. So tell us about some of your journey.
Well, thanks for having me. I am excited to be here, and a big part of my journey involves some of the things that you guys are doing. So I have been through it in EMS, even though I am younger to the career, but I just think that shows it doesn't take tons of years doing this to develop the burnout and the trauma and all the things that come along with it. But I started out in fire, realized I really liked medicine, moved on to medicine, went through EMT, AEMT, and paramedic, became a ground paramedic on a 911 service. Then I headed towards critical care school, started doing ground critical care. Just recently, in the last 6 months, got a flight job. So I've
Congrats.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So we've been hanging out most of the morning. This is mid-afternoon for those of you who care about that part of it. But we've been hanging out most of the day. Tell us about how you got into the social media world. This is a really interesting story I've already heard.
Yeah, so it was all by accident. I was actually working at a really rural service part-time, and we had a lot of time on our hands most days. So we were making some videos, and I just threw like a funny, entertaining one out there, and it went viral. Again, all by accident, and it started to be a fun way because I was really burnt out at the time. I had 2 full-time jobs on ground 911, which was too much. Do not recommend that. But it was just a good way to connect with people who are equally as excited about the job. So that was my motivation to keep me going. Like, people do still love this job. I was just in a place where people were a little bitter.
Where do you find the openness to talk about some of the things that you talk about? Because some of your topics are pretty hardcore in the sense of mental health and, recent posts you've made and addiction and all these things. Like, how do you find the openness and the strength to even discuss something like that?
It's still scary every time that I do it. I will say I am very aware that there's not a huge community of people on the internet that are being so open. So when you are really open about these things, there's going to be the haters, and there's going to be people who come in and make comments that are like, well, you shouldn't be doing this if you have these struggles, and they just will bash first responders and the struggle and the realities of it, which is wild to me, especially a lot of those people do not do the job. I went through my own struggles with mental health and burnout and poor culture and all this, the services that I was working for, and I realized a lot of other people were dealing with it, and they had leadership that wasn't listening to them, and I just felt like people needed to hear that they were not the only ones. So it is very rewarding for people to come back and either message me, email me, or whatever it is, and say, thank you so much for putting this out there. This is exactly what I was thinking. I just didn't know how to say it. So giving people a voice that they didn't really know they had.
And I think that one of the things that we miss, I guess, and one of the things I look for when I'm looking for content to watch while I'm just sitting somewhere doing nothing is genuine people. I think that's what I love the most about watching your videos, is that you are truly genuine.
Thank you.
You feel real. Even reaching out to you to have you on the podcast, it was kind of a shock. Like, she's just as real as she seems. It's not a put on it. And having her here, it was so funny that she had kind of a shyness walking in, and I was like, wow, she really is just like us. And then you kind of lose sight of that when you see people on your phone. You're like, oh, they got 60,000 followers, and your follower base is getting pretty large.
I'm very normal, though, I promise, and I struggle with all the same things that everyone else does, and I am lucky to have the platform that I do, that I get to share those things. So I think it would be a waste of a following and a platform if I didn't. So
Did you get a lot of positive response from your coworkers or?
Initially, the thing is, the loud ones are always the meanest ones. I got a lot of that. I'm just being honest. Like the
Kim,
people.
you're loud.
I don't mean it like that. I just mean like the people who are gonna say something are gonna say it loudly. And I have people to this day who are basically trying to take me down, essentially, and like ruin everything that I've worked so hard for. But
I can't see why though. You guys' content, Nurse Gwenny, all these people that I watch on a regular basis, like that's kind of a highlight to my day when I'm finally laying on the couch after work every day. Funny story. I tried to show a girl in dispatch your content, and the first video that came up was something educational based. And she said, "I'm not running my TikTok feed for education." I said, "Why? That's the best stuff." So everybody's got different tastes, but I just thought her reaction was really funny.
yeah, definitely. There's a lot of people have big feelings about social media and EMS. But I even since I've started social media, I see a lot more creators who are in the field putting content out, which is really exciting. We're creating a space for ourselves.
Yeah.
You recently posted about how behind the uniform, behind the sarcasm and tough calls, a lot of first responders are quietly struggling, not with medicine, but with the aftermath. Could you elaborate on what that aftermath truly feels like and why it's so difficult for providers to process it within the job's current structure?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the time we're just all programmed to be the calm, and it could be everybody's worst day that we're coming into contact with, but we have to be so calm, cool, and collected, and we have to get the job done. And I think for a long time in EMS and first responder roles, it's always been like, well, this is just what we do. Like, we're just doing our job, which we are doing our job, but there is a lot of baggage that comes along with doing our job.
Sure.
But because that's been the mentality, people are, I think, genuinely afraid to speak out. And I have a very strong connection with my coworkers and the people that I'm on shift with every day. And they are my best friends. They're on the podcast with me. Like, we do absolutely everything together. And when I was struggling so intensely with like some of the, and it wasn't even a specific call. It was just all of it had like added up, and I didn't realize that like it had all added up until it was overflowing. And I was afraid to tell them, the people that I share everything with, I share a bedroom with. Like, I didn't realize that it was something that I would have ever struggled with until it was happening to me. And I mean, I did try to take my own life, and like I had to get that far before I told these people I needed help. So I think that there are far more people struggling than we think, because I had that, openness with my friend group. I had the support system. I had everything that you could possibly think about needing to get through all the tough aftermath and all the quiet and all the feelings, but it just built up so quickly before I knew it. It was not something I was able to contain. And I think that people need to hear that, like, for me, like you said before, you see people on social media and they might seem like they have it all together, and I didn't want to be that. And I had a hard time making content during my mental health crisis, for lack of a better term, and I felt like a phony because I was like, I'm not sharing what's really going on. So I realized I really needed to start sharing what was actually going on, and that means, like, just because everyone seems like they have it together, they probably don't.
Well, I think we live in a social media world that you can literally represent anything you want to represent. I used to be the world's worst at looking at other people and going, look at what they have, look at what they've done, look at how good their life is. When in reality, it may not be.
Yeah.
It may not be that great.
It makes you ask yourself sometimes, like, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to work, I'm working really hard, I'm trying to be a good wife or a husband and parent, wear all the hats and do it efficiently and be a good friend. And then, inside it feels like you're almost dying because you're working so hard to achieve all of these things that we're supposed to. And then when you can't, or there's setback after setback, and then you see other people, which I'm happy for, I'm genuinely, but it makes you question yourself, like, where am I going wrong in my own life, and not moving forward and in this position.
Yeah, I think that is a good point too. Like, everyone else seems like they're ahead of the game and they're, meeting goals and all that. But I say this a lot, and like, EMS is truly just luck of the draw. You could get every terrible call forever and ever. You could get every terrible partner, every terrible supervisor, and this person next to you is living the dream for real, because they have all those things, like the support system and the good partner, and they haven't had all these crazy calls. So like, sometimes we're just unlucky.
Yeah. That's exactly right. One of the things that you mentioned that I picked up on is you shared a little bit of your story about, your mental health crisis, for lack of a better term. Why do you think that in the first responder community, why is it that we tend to turn to those things that are harmful to us?
I think that it's kind of cultural in EMS to like, if you're not okay, then like you're just not tough enough for the job. So because you maybe feel like you're not tough enough, or you're not meeting the goals that everyone else is meeting, or not, a successful quote unquote like provider, or maybe you've had to change services because of struggles. But whatever it is, like I think that we have this mentality that we're not tough enough. So the only way to maybe get through that is to turn to like alcohol or substances, or self-harm, or ultimately maybe like making an attempt or being successful with that in our lives, because we don't have anybody that we think will understand, because they all seem like they're doing fine too, because it's the tough it out mentality. Like we just have to be tough. Like
I use a phrase with my children in playing with them when they get hurt or something. I'll say, suck it up, buttercup. But that's the time in EMS that I was raised in. Like up until maybe 10 years ago, there was not mental health in the first responder. I mean, police had stuff, and every once in a while you see a firefighter thing, but now you've got the Code Green campaign. You've got all these people that are pushing toward mental health. FirstNet with AT&T does a lot of stuff for provider mental health. So I think that, we grew up in that time where it was suck it up, buttercup, and that spilled over. I know you hadn't been in EMS as long as I have, but, that spilled over into you guys' generation that came behind us too. Yeah, I'm not that much older than Sophie. Let's chill.
Slow down there.
Kim is, yeah. No, I'm kidding. Kim's my age. But, we lived in that for so long. And then coming out of it, you're stuck in that brain rut of, I'm not supposed to ask for help. I'm not supposed to need help. And it's very difficult when you've lived in that to keep going. Did you have something?
I was going to say, I think sometimes at the moment that we feel like we need help, we're in a very fragile position. I know for myself in my own struggles, I felt like I was like at a very strong breaking point, to where like if one more thing happened, I don't know if I could control like my self from trying to commit suicide. Like the thoughts were already there. Like I feel better off dead. I don't want to feel this pain anymore. I just want to be numb. And so I think I was afraid to reach out and get a negative response.
Sure.
Because I don't think I could have handled that at the time if I didn't have anybody to like handle me gently, but I didn't know who that person was at the time.
Absolutely.
So I think that sometimes maybe the numbing coping mechanisms result there, and like, well, at least if I get drunk, I can go to sleep.
It numbs
Yes.
everything,
Yeah.
See, that was me. I went through a divorce in the midst of being an EMS provider, and in the midst of doing all this other stuff and having to run these bad calls and then go run the next one and the next one and the next one without being fazed by it. So I went through a period of, it wasn't full-blown, well, maybe I'm in denial. It wasn't full-blown alcoholism, but I was drinking every night to numb that feeling of, the feeling of loss, the feeling of desertion, the feeling of, loneliness. And then on top of all that, you have the EMS, on top of it, all the trauma from that. One of the things that I love that you do is you have just, and I'm going to say this, you have some of the most piercing eyes of anybody I've ever seen. When you're on the screen, I feel like you're talking to me. And I think other people resonate with that, with your content. Is there a thought that goes through your head before you make a video of getting yourself mentally prepared to make a video or to say something that is going to be hard, or that you've dealt with yourself?
Something I've been doing lately is I'll write things down and I'll just read them on screen.
Yeah.
I know there's a few
Don't give all the secrets away.
Yeah. There's a few hard-hitting topics that I've done lately that it's probably just easier for me to read it, but I think people need to hear it. I think that it needs to be said, and there's not a lot of people that I think are willing to say it. And I want to make content as reachable in a way that doesn't seem like work. So some people do want to read my Facebook content. Some people would rather just listen to a video, or listen to a podcast or watch a video. But I just want to make sure that I know why I'm doing this. So as long as my intentions are pure and I'm like, I am sending this out to whoever needs to hear it. And there's going to be people that hate it, but there's going to be a lot more people who love it and need it.
Yep.
So I don't really, sometimes I just spur of the moment do it, but if it is a really hard topic, sometimes I'll just read it.
So, Sophie, you advocate for celebrating first responders in recovery, calling them courageous and badass. What role do you think peer support and open conversations like the ones we're having on this podcast play in helping to foster a culture of recovery without shame?
So I think peer support programs in general are very important. The ground service that I work for just started a full-blown program. We obviously have our chaplains and things like that, but it's like a legitimate program. There's like a check-in process with all employees. There's certain calls that are going to trigger that. So like you were saying before, I didn't feel like there was somebody that I could go talk to, and if they didn't respond like I needed them to in that moment, then it would have sent me over the edge. Or like you said, you're like, I don't feel like I was in full-blown alcoholism, but I definitely, feel like it was excessive for
Absolutely.
For my health and things like that. So I think having these programs and having people who are trained to reach out to people and say, I've noticed this and I'm just a little worried. You haven't been, you stay up all night, every shift, you don't sleep. I noticed that, maybe you've been a little more absent. Like having people that can just reach out to you and be like, I've just noticed that is something that I really needed. And the signs are there. I think that if people would have understood what the signs were, that are like, this is a problem. So I think peer support is really important in the way of we have people that can reach out and be like, hey, I've noticed, you've been going out a lot, you've been late to work, you've been coming in hungover, things like that. But it's hard to do that to ourselves and be like, oh, I do have a problem. And I drank to go to sleep. That is why I would drink. And I was in the same boat. And actually, I am 505 days sober today.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Having a support system is really important. Aubrey and Jamie, who I do the podcast with, they're both sober, but it is a really hard decision to make because it's so culturally appropriate, honestly, to go have drinks with your friends, to go out and have fun and be a human being. So it feels almost like you're removing yourself even more from, your peers and things like that. So it is a really scary thing to do, to say, I'm going to, try for sobriety. And sobriety is a really scary word to people who aren't alcoholics. I think it's even more scary because you can go to work and not need a drink. You can go several days and not need to drink. It's just when it's really heavy and hard, you're like, I just want to go to sleep, right? And that's the ideology I think a lot of people have. It's I just want to be asleep. It's not like I want to be drunk, right? I just want to be asleep. So it was really hard for me and the people that I'm also sober with to be like, that actually is, using alcohol for the wrong reasons. So sobriety is maybe the only option because I have not been responsible with this. But I think it is scarier for people who don't actually identify as alcoholics because sobriety, that, by saying I'm sober, it almost has the connotation that oh, I was an alcoholic. And maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. I think it just has some scary feelings associated with saying I'm sober.
Well, that was way bad.
Yes, it was so bad. It was so bad, yeah.
So say there's listeners out there that are struggling with alcoholism or substance abuse. What is the fill-in? Now that that's gone, now that you're 505, is that right? 505 days sober, what's the fill-in when you have a really heavy shift, heavy call, and now you're on an aircraft pretty much full-time and you do part-time truck work, right? So you're obviously, a majority of your calls on aircraft are going to be at least semi-heavy to some extent. So what's the fill-in now?
The fill-in now is actually having feelings. I think that was the hardest thing for me. I had been friends with these people 5 and 6 years and they had never seen me cry. Never one time. And I spend all my time with them. I go backpacking with them. We go on vacations together. We do everything together. And they had never seen me cry. I not only got sober, I started going to therapy and doing all these things to try and be okay again. And I realized that it is a huge burden off your shoulders to say it out loud. Even last shift, I know we talked about my last flight shift was a very busy, heavy shift. And I just called my friend on the way home and I cried all the way home. I even had to pull over because I was crying that much. So being able to have your feelings and feel your feelings and have a safe person who you can do that with was the only option for me, because that's what I was doing. I was just hiding them.
And that's one of my goals in doing this podcast, is to normalize that.
Yeah.
Because what we think of as normal was never meant to be normal.
Yeah.
Us compartmentalizing and keeping everything in until it all explodes in one big episode of something,
Yeah.
whether it's, you know, a suicide attempt, or whether it's more drinking, or whether it's more drugs, or whatever it is. We were never built that way. We're supposed to have emotions and feelings, and to normalize being able to call somebody and cry. Kim and I have had innumerable deep conversations, and my wife and I have numerous deep conversations, because she works at the Children's Hospital here as well. She's in the NICU, and that can get very heavy as well. So we have heavy conversations, and we feel our feelings. And I'm a big advocate for therapy. Kim is kind of on the opposite side of that fence. She's more peer support,
Yeah, and I think
that kind of thing.
there's
And
gonna be
nothing
a
is
different-
wrong.
Yeah, there's going to be
Yeah.
a different solution to every person.
There is a different solution for every person. And that's one of the things to normalize. Like, you crying to a friend on the way home is fine. Me talking to my wife is also fine. There's no one wrong or right way.
I think it also helps too to have somebody talk to you. Like I'm not anti-counseling or anti-counselor, but sometimes counselors that haven't came from the background we do, I don't feel like they have the same level of understanding, like a personal relation to it. I mean, they might have been taught about it, but it doesn't resonate with them
Yeah.
to their heart the way it does us. And maybe it's just the genuineness in me, but I would rather talk to a peer that truly understands. Not
Yeah.
that I'm happy to say, hey, I have trauma from this job, or happy that you are, but more of like, I love you, we're in this together.
Yeah.
And
And I think that's our relationship when we talk to each other about this stuff. It's pretty tough to look at somebody and go, I am wrecked
Yeah.
about this, and this. One of the things that brought me to this job, dealing with more of the pediatric side, was a kid that drowned. And I'll tell that story until I die, because the guys that I saw come in and work on that kid were as confident as I wanted to be. But that kid wrecked me. I mean, just completely wrecked me for weeks. And it wasn't until I finally had somebody say, you are not okay. Recognize the signs and come to me and say, you're not okay. So normalizing that it's okay for us to come to our peers and go, are you good?
Yeah. Yeah.
So have you experienced that, where you've seen a peer that's struggling and you have to kind of intervene? Because I think that's more of what I do here. She's one of the few that will come to me immediately.
Yeah.
But I make it a point when there's a bad call, like I'm reaching out to everybody. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Have you experienced that with, with your close group of friends?
I think that having a system in place too, that when it is a rough call, just have the expectation that you're probably going to get a call, just to make sure you're okay, and that's just a standard. Because I do think that's important too, because there's some people who have, maybe they've been asked by 10 different people, are you okay? That was a hard call, and they are okay, and then they're like, oh my gosh, I'm crazy, I'm a psycho, because I am fine, and that was a really crazy call, but like, I'm fine. So I think just having a system in place that says, this is the standard, this is the person that's going to reach out to you every time you get, a high intensity call, just to make sure everyone's good, and we don't need, extra help. I think having that standardized is pretty cool, because there was a time in my career where I ran a PD code. It was my first one at the service I worked for. And, I already worked at a children's hospital, so, I had unfortunately encountered this many times before, but my supervisor asked my partner at the time, because I just walked in and I said, hey, can I have the keys to the stock room? Because we're going to restock. And as I was walking out, he looked at my partner and said, what, is she psycho? And I'll never forget that, because I was okay in that moment. And maybe my decompression time was going to clean and restock the truck, and that's all I needed. So I think it's just important to know that, it's okay to not be okay, but it's also okay to be okay.
Yes.
I know that kind of is not what the question was, but
That's
I wanted
okay.
to bring that up.
But that's a good line that we can run down. How do you mentally justify being okay with what the rest of the world would see as not okay? Is it just your experience? Is it just the culmination of maybe we are a little psycho?
I think that it is, like we said before, EMS is just luck of the draw, and we are normal people too that have lives outside of this. So I think it might just be where you are in that time and what hit you the hardest. You could be, having a call, experiencing a call that is very maybe low intensity. Most people would not be affected by it, but because of everything else that's going on in your life,
Absolutely.
that is
absolutely. I was just fixing to say the reason that I asked that question is because I've been there.
Yeah.
Something that should have bothered me, I was okay with it. Like you said, my decompression time was simply cleaning the truck, getting back together, getting ready for the next call. But then I have little grandma that's been married to her husband for 50 years, grab his hand and go, I'm never going to see him again. And that just wrecked me. Something that was like not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Or an animal that dies
Yeah.
in a car accident,
Yes.
that'll get me every time too.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I'm not even that big an animal person, but there's something about pets when they die in the, I can't stand it. I cannot do it.
I think,
I cannot do it.
yeah, I think that it just could be anything at any time, or it could be nothing. Everything is just one grain in the bucket, one grain of sand in the bucket, and the bucket is eventually going to need to be dumped out. Or you can keep it pretty empty. Like, it just depends. Like, if you're able to like talk to people, if you haven't had anything crazy happen, like everything is just relative to the worst thing that's ever happened to us.
I get that.
And there's a lot of bad things that we've experienced.
So, culturally, and I think, Kim, it would be good for you to talk on this, but culturally, in EMS, we tend to live in kind of a rumor mill. So, talk about how that has affected you, and then y'all can converse back and forth.
As far as the rumor mill is concerned, a lot of the reason,
Because I feel like women are more prone to
Yes.
being in the rumor mill than the men are. And it's a sexist thing that we kind of have in EMS. It's an imbalance. But you know, as well as I do, that women in EMS always get termed certain terminologies, and it's a big rumor mill. And that affects our mental health too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's really, like, just simply put, like, anytime I have a video in my flight suit, and for the record, what I'm about to say, my flight suit fits me appropriately. But there are so many people that will comment and be like, it's too tight. Your flight suit's too tight. It's too small, whatever. And it is literally not. It's so baggy that my crotch is like at my knees, okay? So it is not too tight, for the record. But no one would ever say that to a man on the internet.
No.
No one would be like, your flight suit, bro, it's too tight. I can see your booty. No, that would never happen. People are just like, I don't know, like the rules go out the window when
Yeah.
you start talking about women.
So what's your experience with that?
oh, I think there's just a generalized cattiness. I
Yeah.
don't know why.
Yeah.
And it depends. It does depend. Not everybody, I will say not everybody's that way. And I think that as you age, it becomes a lot less. I think it's more prevalent in the 20s to 30s crowd. And then after 30s, you lose your give a shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like,
Absolutely.
you want to talk about me? Have at
Go
it.
ahead.
You
I
go on
can't
ahead.
think of a better subject. Yeah. But yeah, I experienced that too, but I just always felt like it was worse for women.
Yeah.
And your example is perfect. I mean, because it really, you really do get those comments. And I'm sure when you post a video of, I guess, how do you handle it mental health wise? When you have the creeps that show up in your, because I know you have creeps.
Yeah.
You have to have. Everybody on social media.
If anyone contacts me, like private message wise, just know I'm probably not going to respond to you because there's way more mean people in my my DMs, and
I feel special
Nice
she responded
people.
to me.
I
She
come through them
responded to
every
me.
once in a while. But yeah, I think that, and I did not believe this was a real thing, honestly, until I got into EMS, because I worked in a hospital, which is primarily women. And I got into EMS, and I was like, oh, there is like a big difference between doing this job as a woman and doing this job as a man. And at my service, it's pretty, almost 50-50. It's like 40-60 women to men. But you still see most of these leadership roles are given to men. And I think there's a good example. I know this is not quite what we're talking about, but I still think it matters and we should talk about it. Is one of my peers. She has the same experience, the same credentials, actually more credentials, and has been in EMS and is the same age as a male counterpart that applied for a supervisory role. The male got it, and they told her she was too young. She's the same age as
Same
him.
age as him.
Because we're perceived as younger. We're perceived as, like, more incapable, I think, generally. And I think it is getting better. I do think it's getting better. We're seeing more women in this field.
And
so.
I have personally found that to be the opposite.
Yeah.
Like the female partners I've had, and coming to the critical care team I'm part of now was a big shift, because here it's the exact opposite ratio. We have many, many more women than we do men. I don't even know how to put a percentage on it, but you guys far outweigh the men.
I would say 75.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably 75% women.
Yeah.
And women naturally are going to flock to pediatrics, and that makes sense. And a lot of our people come from our partner hospital, so that makes sense as well. But I have found in my practice that the women sometimes are smarter, more capable, and just as strong as the men. And especially with the introduction of the auto load stretchers, which is
Yeah.
all four.
Do you think it's changed on the same topic, but do you think it's changed your personality
Yes.
as far as like being an EMS?
Absolutely. I think we know by now I'm pretty quiet. I think I'm more reserved, but I had a Marshall, my partner, his name was Marshall, very handsome, very tall, very buff man. He was an EMT, I was paramedic. No one ever talked to me on scene. No one would tell me anything. They wouldn't even look at me. They wouldn't acknowledge me, a small fry female. And that made me a lot more aggressive. It made me a lot louder. And I think that because we have to be so assertive to be heard, we're often just labeled,
Yes.
we're just labeled bitches. Like if you're
Yeah.
a strong, intelligent female, you're just a bitch.
Yeah.
But we're just doing the same thing the guys are doing. But we
Yeah,
might have to like
absolutely.
wave our hands and be like, "Hello, I need you to talk to me. I'm in charge here." I've had to say that. I'm like, "Hey, I am actually in charge here. I need to take care of this person, so I need to know the information." So I think it has made me a little more aggressive.
We were talking about females and EMS and the kind of reputation they get and the kind of mental health strain that it puts on providers. Talking about managers and how that can be a psychological trauma as well. So tell us about your particular experiences with bad management and how it affected your overall mental health.
Yeah, so like I said, I kind of built up to this mental health like crisis that kind of finally exploded. And it wasn't like a call. It wasn't the shift work. It wasn't anything like that. It was a repeated negative interaction with a supervisor that wasn't even my supervisor. It was not my direct supervisor. And it was over and over and over again and relentless. And it seemed like there was nothing I could do to stop it. I told all the right people. My peers saw it going on. My partner saw it happen. I mean, it was bad. It was like looking back, I'm like, what on earth? But nothing ever happened. I even escalated it all the way to HR. Nothing ever happened. It was just like I was wild, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm just a baby, and I can't handle anything because this has been absolute torment. And like that literally was the thing when nobody believed me and no one did anything about it and no one did anything to protect me or separate us, like where we had no interaction. In fact, they told me that I could go somewhere. I could go move. That it wasn't going to be the person that was inflicting like this legitimate, like just unprovoked negative behavior. I was like, okay, well, they don't care about me. No one cares about me. I'm already in a place where like, I'm ready. Well, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do anything anymore.
Yeah.
So it was like the final thing that just sent me literally over the edge. And I was like, no one cares. So why should I?
So what you're describing is moral injury. I don't know if you ever heard that terminology
Yeah.
before, but moral injury is basically when we think that a certain group of people is going to have our backs. People that are supposed to have our backs, supervisors, leadership, HR, you named a bunch of them. Even friends, we can incur moral injury from our friends when we expect them to do something and they do the exact opposite. I've had a very similar experience with a manager. To tell you just a brief story, we had all of our narcotics stolen off of the ambulance one night.
Oh, man.
Let me tell you, if you've never dealt with a DEA, they have no sense of humor. We love them, though, if you're listening to this. We don't want any government agencies. However, they do not have a very good sense of humor, and they were not happy that all of our narcotics were gone. So we all had to come in and do the drug test and all that stuff. Well, the reason that they got stolen is because I decided not to park the ambulance in the bay because it was trucks that were blocking the way. So I just parked it outside and the narcs got stolen. My fault. I took responsibility for it. Well, fast forward, I was in the back of my truck just sweeping my truck out after a call, and the truck starts driving off. It's my manager who jumped in and accuses me of having the doors locked and just drives off. He'd randomly come up, steal my bag out of my truck and go hide it. He's like, do you know where your bag is? But it was,
Yeah.
and even escalating all that, nothing ever happened.
Right.
So I felt very morally injured
Yeah.
because
hard
that's
to
not
do.
how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's not how EMS is supposed to be. And there's thousands of stories out there. If you're ever interested, you can. Yeah, there's so many people that have that very similar experience as you and I. And I know you've experienced this because we experienced it together.
Multiple occasions.
Multiple occasions. We went through our gamut of bad management and poor communication and all those things you don't expect.
Yeah.
So from a leadership position, I try to be different than that. I try to be very different than that because I don't ever want to be that reason somebody winds up in a mental health crisis
Or ends up on antidepressants.
or
Because
we all did.
Yeah.
We all did. Yeah, absolutely. It was a hard time, and it is mentally taxing.
One thing that I bring up a lot is that we do not remediate, demote, or fire enough in this field.
Yes.
And bad
Agreed.
things should be met with negative consequences.
So what's the cultural shift? What has to be the cultural shift within EMS to make everything we talked about feel more okay?
I talk about this a lot on my platform, and I often say that it's not all up to, the crews, it's not all up to leadership, but a lot of the times bad leadership will be like, it's up to the crews. And that is bad leadership.
Indeed.
But I think we've talked about this. I don't know if it was what we talked about earlier in the day or what we recorded. But
We've talked a lot today.
yes. We talked about how, like getting people together and, team building or doing things outside of work. Just like my shift at my ground service is so strong because we are so connected inside and outside of work. We will have each other's backs. Like these are ride or die. Like we will advocate for each other. And if someone is out of line, we have an open relationship with each other to be like, you hurt my feelings. That wasn't nice. Like what you said was rude or unkind or uncalled for. And like being able to like say that to someone and confront someone like that was a really hard skill to learn. I think that good people are often very bad at that. But having those open relationships with people, like where you can communicate without fear of them just getting mad at you for expressing how you may have hurt them is really important. And I think that does come from, having, service team buildings or company team buildings. Like you have a company picnic or like there needs to be some kind of relationship outside of the clinical setting. And I think a lot of people disagree with that. But
No, I know.
I think that you have to know each other and you have to see each other as human beings.
Yes.
I think that's important too, because I always say I come here and I put on my work hat, and then when I go home, I take off my work hat, and I'm my home person.
That's exactly.
And those two people are completely different. When I walk in the door, I show off all of my emotions, and I'm here to do my job and do what I need to do to make it through the day. But if we can't live our life in that realm, like we have to decompress and open up and become human. And I think a lot of us also with mental health have a hard time transitioning back over to ourselves. I think we lose ourselves. A lot of us lose ourselves because of that. We just kind of live in that realm of like shut down, repressed. And I even noticed that like with my own family, to where I'll come home and like I'm talking to my family like I'm talking to a coworker or like in a stressful situation. Not because I want to, but habitual after 13 years, 14 years of doing this, you're more demanding, you're not as gentle. And I know I've heard a lot of comments from friends like, you're not the same person that you used to be. And it's not that I don't want to be the same person, but, you tend to, back to the topic we were talking about, like with females and males in this, in our professions, we tend to, call it masculine and feminine energy.
Yeah.
Women tend to, I would say we bounce back and forth, a lot of us.
Yeah.
Like, we're strong, but also like, I think naturally we want to be caretakers and gentle and nurturing and loving individuals, but it's hard to be that when you're not heard with that tone of voice. You can't be meek and mild. And so you tend to be more aggressive. And I think even for myself, I tend to live more in masculine energy now than feminine energy. And I miss seeing that side of me that's kind of more gentle and nurturing. And I think spending time with my coworkers outside of work, I tend to see that more often now. So I think
Well, just like Sophie, you said earlier, you work with a male partner, and our positions kind of require us to be a certain way. I can remember my wife came and did a ride along, and the way that I had to talk to a patient's family was very blunt, was very forward,
Yeah.
was very
Real.
gruff,
Yeah, you gotta,
kind
reality
of,
is hard sometimes.
and that's just reality. And she stepped back and was like, I've never seen you talk like that. I've never seen you be that. And I have to be, and you guys have to be too. We all have to be, because we're in a position where, we have to make people sometimes do things they don't want to do and take procedures that they are not necessarily happy with, that they'll agree to on a legal standpoint, but certainly not happy with. And there's a lot of times we have to take people by force that don't want to go to the hospital, and they're intoxicated, or they're, high, or whatever. So we do have to be different people. So I think it's important to shed that off every once in a while. Let your peers see, no, they're not always that.
They're not an asshole. They're fun and cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But that is a hard thing to do from the person who is that and perceived as that. It's a very hard thing to let that guard down and show who you really are.
Yeah, I think we have normalized taking the humanity out of this job when it
Yes.
is literally the most human job you could do. Like,
Because you're caring for others
Yeah.
all day, every day.
yeah, I think it didn't happen all at once, but little by little,
Mhm.
we got to where we are.
Very
And
much so.
you just have to know each other to love each other. And I think, yeah, getting to know your friends, being friends with your coworkers is okay. I know there's some people who want to shut down and like they don't want to mix work and play, and that's okay too. But I think you should try it. You
Yeah,
might
me too.
realize you actually like your coworkers a lot more than you thought.
So I think it was a Facebook post that you recently made, was talking about the seasonal strain.
Yeah.
Summer's really hard on me. I'm a big guy and I don't like the heat.
Yeah.
Even walking over here, I was sweating.
Especially in the South.
Yes.
Humidity.
Yeah, we're in the South, so it is tough. Tell us about some of the other seasonal strains, because my most depressive season, if you will, is always wintertime, when it's just kind of dark and gloomy every day. And you get that in the South, we get this weather pattern where we can go a week and a half and not see the sunshine. And I always described myself when I was on the unit as Superman. If I can get the sunshine in that fresh day, even after 2 or 3 hours of sleep, I'm refreshed. I feel like, let's do it again, and I feel like I'm still that way in some regards, because when the sun comes out, I generally have a better mood. So talk about some seasonal strains that you've realized in your career.
Well, definitely summertime. We're in it right now. It's hot. It's miserable. For us, it's been raining literally like every single day, at least sometime during the day. I think this especially rings true to like ground crews, is that like one call in nice weather is one call. One call in weather like this is like 15 calls. Like, it's just so much harder. And even like in a flight suit, it's just so much harder. And summer is also the season of like non-accidental trauma.
Yeah.
It's like people ruining their lives either on accident or ruining someone else's life on purpose. And it is a very sad season because, I mean, people's lives change. I think that I've been seeing that a lot lately, and that is hard. And, a 15-year-old, has an accident diving into a pool and can no longer walk or breathe on his own. Or on a 20-year-old, falls off his motorcycle and has a brain injury. He'll never be the same.
Yeah.
Or, kids are home more, so we see more pediatric abuse cases and things like that. So it's a trying season, not just for the weather, but also the type of calls we get. And I just think that is important for, management who work in air conditioning all day and things like that to understand that. Yeah.
That's me.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But you've done the groundwork.
I have.
So just like remember how hard that was, and like
Absolutely.
your crews. It is truly the little things. I think we know this in EMS. Like, go and grab your crew some popsicles, some Gatorades. Like, make sure that they don't need a timeout because they're dehydrated and haven't eaten all day. Like, we can do a little more love in these kind of seasons. But on the other hand, like, I didn't really recognize this until the last couple of years, is we don't see a lot of like mental health cases in the way of like self-harm or suicide in the wintertime. And you think it would be like that. You see it more in the springtime, actually, and like statistically this is true and proven, is people are like, they stay sad, and then it's wintertime, so they have an excuse to be sad. That's something other than whatever they're dealing with inside themselves or at work or with their family. They're like, it's weather. Like, it's dark, it's gloomy, it's cold. I'm sad because of that. When springtime comes and it starts to get warm and sunny, I'll be okay. And then people realize they didn't get better when it got warm and sunny. So that's why we see it the most there. And I understand that now, but when I first started, like, I'm like, this is like the happiest time. Like, spring, it's like the new beginning.
The beginning, yeah.
I think that is something to think about, and for all of us to have on our radar, that like spring actually could be the hardest time for some of the people that we either take care of or are partners with or whatever. So I just wanted to throw that in there because it's something we don't really think
one
about.
of the things that I did, and it lined up with the changing of the seasons. So I was on antidepressants and still am. I have no problem admitting
Me
that.
too.
Me too.
Oh, yes. All right. Go on. But I started to feel better with the first round of antidepressants. Once it started to get to a therapeutic level and I started to feel great, I was like, I don't need this anymore.
Yeah.
Off I went. And talk about lowest of the low, like full crash out. And it was then I realized, like, I have a problem. This is not something that is going to...
It's a medical problem.
Yeah. This is not something that's going to go away.
Yeah.
And I thought I had this unreal expectation of what an antidepressant does, that I was like, that'll be fine. After I take the antidepressants, it fixes my brain and then I can get off of it.
Yeah.
It's not like chemotherapy. You don't get better and then move on with your life.
Yeah.
It is a kind of a like deal that your brain is chemically imbalanced. And I think that accepting that and making that real, making it genuine. I'm a manager. You're a paramedic. We're you and I are successful paramedics. She's a successful RT, and we're all on antidepressants.
Yeah.
We're still successful. We can still be happy. We can still function in life.
Yes. Definitely.
It may take some pharmaceutical intervention,
okay.
but that's okay.
Yeah, you would never say like, I'm not going to take this blood pressure medicine because I just
Right.
really
It's
tougher.
the same thing.
That was weird. Like,
And you'll be dead.
yes.
It's just like when I don't take
Exactly.
Yeah, I take my colorful happy pills.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Well, I think that, just like you said, like, it could just simply be a chemical imbalance. It's not because you didn't try hard enough with therapy or, share your feelings or whatever. And this job, there is no way you can tell me in my face that it doesn't change your chemical makeup. It changes every part.
It changes everything.
Yeah.
It changes everything.
Absolutely.
I tell people, and I hate this. I absolutely hate this. And you'll both of you will definitely resonate with this. I hate when people find out you work on the ambulance, and what's the question they ask you?
What's the worst thing?
What's the worst thing you ever say?
It's automatic.
It is, why do you?
Also, you're not going to get the answer that I think you want to get.
No.
Like, it's
Either
not
I'm
what you
gonna,
expect.
for me, either I'm going to give you the full shock and awe and let you experience my world, or I'm going to hit you with something that is the strangest, weirdest out there. That's usually what I go to because it doesn't take me back to a depressive place.
Yes.
I usually go with the strange, you'll never believe this.
When you would never go to someone and be like, what was the worst day of your life? Because that's essentially what you're doing.
That's essentially what you're asking.
What's a weird thing to do? Why is that?
Why?
I'm not sure.
Why? And I literally hate that.
Yeah.
But I think that taking some of the stigma away from us admitting that that's the worst day of our lives, like, because we stigmatize all this stuff. And I've got, and I don't know which one I'll use. Daniel Sundial, who does the Dance on Photography, has given us permission to use all his artwork as our artwork for the podcast episodes. And we're getting to interview him soon, so we're really excited about that too. But I've got a picture in my office and I'm looking at now that is a paramedic with a demon's hands wrapped around her face. It says stigma on his arms, and I think that's exactly what we've done. We've allowed the stigma to close our own mouths because we're scared of what other people will think. And I think we've started the process. It's not complete by any means, but we've started the process to like destigmatizing all this mental health stuff. So having a platform that we can conversate like this, 10 years ago, I would have never thought to do this. I'd have never even ventured out to say any of the things that I say today. But after a lot of work on myself and work in the environment that we work and live in, we're here talking about mental health. So you've alluded to it a few times. Tell us about your podcast.
So, like I've said, I have a really close group of work friends, and we often would sit in the bay and talk about the things that, we were experiencing in the field or at home, or, when we travel a lot. And, we sit around the fire quite literally and talk about life. And one day I was like, we should be recording this. I was like, we're going to start a podcast. And they're like, ha ha ha, that's so funny. And then we went and bought all the stuff, and I was like, we started a podcast. Here's the artwork. And we just went for it, and I'm really glad that we did. We just released episode 40 yesterday. It's called Life in Sirens. So we don't just talk about the work, we talk about our lives, talk about culture, we talk about mental health, we talk about writing, we literally talk about everything.
Yes, I enjoyed listening to you guys. I'm a very conversationalist podcast guy.
Yeah.
I like podcasts where they sit around and conversate like that, like this. This is what I'm aiming for. It's
There's
just
a lot of
natural
banter.
conversation. There's banter. There's the vacuum cleaner trying to be possessive over there at the time. There's a whole thing, and I'll probably leave a lot of this stuff in here because it makes us real. It shows you who we are. I think a lot of times, and in your case, a little, not as much, but a little bit, like we present something on social media that we want people to see, like we said earlier, and it's so refreshing to meet somebody like yourself that is real, and that you feel that. You feel like we've sat here and had a good 40-minute conversation, and it's been great.
And I think that's what it's all about. It is sometimes really hard to be really vulnerable and real all the time. And so we don't have to share everything if we don't want to. But I do think it is important that because I've shared and you've shared, we get to come together and do this, and we get to share it with even more people. And I think that's the whole point, is building connections and understanding we are literally all in this together. It's been hard for every single one of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I notice the more we do this too, the more friends we tend to make. And
Yeah.
always leave here feeling a little bit better. And it's like, hey, now I have another phone a friend. If you're having a bad day, call me. And we can talk about it.
Absolutely. So tell everybody that's listening where they can find your stuff.
So for my personal stuff, it is Paramedic Sophie, and that's on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all the things.
Which we found out was accidental, which makes it even better.
Yes. Yes. It all happened by chance, and I'm so glad it did. But for those, you can just search Paramedic Sophie anywhere. And then for Life Inside podcast, you can absolutely listen to that anywhere you listen to podcasts. We are everywhere. We also have YouTube. And then we have a website too, Life in Sirens.
Oh, I've not seen the YouTube.
Yeah. We're working on our YouTube, but there is more content on our YouTube than there is on our TikTok and Instagram. Cool. But Life in Sirens podcast .com. Very basic, but you guys can send in your we have a little form on there. You can send in your experiences. We talk about it on the podcast. We do listener tales, episodes, and things like that. We want to hear from everybody. The point is to connect as many people as we can.
Awesome.
And we have all kinds of stuff. We have a blog too. If you're not much of a social media kind of person, you can just read our blog too. So
a little bit of something for everybody.
if you need us, call us.
We just wanted to thank you for being here and taking the time to come talk with us, Sophie. It's been an awesome experience so far.
Yeah, we're excited that you came.
I'm so excited that I got to meet you guys, and I haven't visited this city very much, so I am very grateful to know you guys.
All right. Well, y'all have a good day.
Take care of yourself, take care of your mind, and we'll talk soon.
You've been listening to A Silent War Within. If this episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, you're not alone and your well-being matters. It's time to end this silent war.